Hello and welcome everyone to another amazing episode of the B2B Pod. I have an exceptional guest for this episode, Anthony Riley. We're going to talk about something that's really interesting to me personally, which is the relationship with the agencies and the clients and how the demand agency of the future will look like.
Welcome to the B2B Pod by the Pulse of Dubai with your host, Radwa Hassan, a podcast that touches upon everything that's going on in and around the B2B industry.
Anthony Riley, President and CEO of the MX Group, is a veteran in the B2B industry and was an active duty Marine for the United States. From startups to Fortune 100s, Anthony has held multiple clients with a focused goal of ensuring their marketing and advertising activities have a measurable and real impact. Using his wealth of experience, he will be joining us to discuss the future of demand agencies and what we can expect. Anthony, thank you so much for joining. I'm happy to have this episode with you.
Radwa, thank you for having me, and I'm really happy to be here. It's great to talk with you today.
Thank you. So for this episode, we're going to talk about something that's really interesting to me personally, which is the relationship with the agencies and the clients and how the demand agency of the future will look like. We can't have a better person than yourself, Anthony, to speak about that. So I would really like to take this topic through the different challenges that we're going through in our relation and engagement with the agencies, and also how the agencies are going to shape up and look like in the future. If we're going to talk about how, with the incredible amount of change, growth, and evolutions in the B2B space, agencies are struggling in some situations, and also the clients are not getting what they want in order to pursue their digital transformation journey and capture all the opportunities that's out there with the help of the agencies. B2B practitioners are experiencing this transformation in both agency and clients. So we cannot just say that, oh, it's the clients who are struggling. Oh, no, the agencies are not connecting, but also with the agencies being a little bit, in some situations, unaware of what's going on the client side or cannot address it in the right way. We'll look at one of the challenges that I'm seeing, which is in the B2B brands, do not find the cohesiveness and accountability in the agency partners today. With digital transformation and the accelerated evolution of marketing within the B2B space, companies end up working with several specialists. So for branding, demand generation, I personally, when I go to the agency, they tell me, work with that person on one project and with another person on a different project. In some situations, they try to bring an account manager, but then still at the same time, they would push you to one specialist if you want a different area. These specialities, I think, is also creating that bit of disconnect, and you don't find this consultant approach within the agency. So it becomes the whole ecosystem has a bit of an issue coming together. What is your view there, Anthony? And from your experience, how do you see it?
Yeah, Radwa, it's a great question that you ask, because we do see that happening a lot these days. And so, if I take a step back, obviously there's a lot of growth happening in the B2B space. We're seeing an increased level of spend in B2B that we've never seen before. And I think from, talking to our clients, that comes from a level of accountability that they haven't experienced before. And so It's only natural to think that that level of accountability and that growth is going to trickle over into the ecosystem and how the agencies are then operating. And, if I look at the model that we're kind of using today, where you might have your brand agency, your demand agency, your social agency, a media agency, maybe even like a digital agency, that model feels a little bit old school. I think there's a newer way to think about that, because the one thing that B2B marketers don't have today is time. And they don't have time to work across all of those agencies, to activate them, to then do the dot connecting for those agencies. And I think there's a smarter way to do that. And what I call that way is intelligent integration, or an intelligently integrated agency. What I mean by that is we've gotten so hung up over the years in the capability of an agency and trying to find an agency that might be a little bit better in one area over the other, that we've added all of these niches and specialties, that we've lost sight in where the true value of an agency lies for a B2B marketer, and that's in the depth of understanding of their business. In B2B, it's more important than any other space to deeply understand your client's business. You need to understand not only the brand, the sales channel. Is it one-step or two-step distribution? Who's the buying group on the other end? What kind of sales process or evaluation process they go through? And so if you step back and you look and you say, the agencies that provide the most value, to steal a word from you, can actually consult and be a good partner to me, are those that have that depth of understanding. Then you can hold that agency accountable and say, this is what I expect from you, and allow that agency to bring in agency partners as they see fit, leveraging their knowledge of the client's business in order to manage and lead their other agency partners in the efforts on a client's brand. That's going to, one, take down the complexity of the management of agencies for the marketer. Two, it's going to lead to better work because everybody that's working on that client's behalf will be operating with a similar level of business knowledge that agency has. And then three, it fuels learning within your key agency that will make them an even better partner. And so I can definitely see a shift from this kind of old school, hey, I'm going to have 5, 6 different agencies I'm going to manage, and I'm going to spend all my time kicking those agencies off and navigating between them, to a model that looks at a partner agency that knows your business and will bring in other agencies as they need fit, so that marketer can then hold them accountable for the brand, the demand, and the digital experience.
Yeah, certainly. And if you remember from our discussion when we were talking about the system integrator agency model, I have this IT background, and having a system integrator is really one of the things that helps any organization. If we're talking about IT, it's just like someone who's your consultant who can bring the latest and the greatest of technologies out there, offer it to you, tells you exactly what fits for you and what doesn't fit. If you have an agency that would be technology agnostic, or rather service agnostic, that they don't care about what you want, but rather what's your journey, what do you want to achieve, and how they can best bring the different services together to create the story you want to tell to your clients. The problem is that not all the agencies have that. And it pretty much, as I see it, even here in my region, goes back to twofold. One is, of course, the maturity of the agency and the maturity of the client as another side, but also the industry itself. Let's say if I'm going to, again, reflect on the IT industry, you find many of the IT organizations, they're quite mature and they need to work with mature agencies. And that's basically here in the Middle East. But even in the Americas or in North America, for you may have a different experience. And if we say that agencies are now transforming, how long will the transformation take? I mean, you would question it's going to take maybe 2 to 3 or 5 years in North America, but here in the Middle East, maybe it would take longer until that change really becomes a mandate. And the issue with the skills, like you said, it's more of how the agency can come out of this building the capabilities and focusing on the different functions within its ecosystem, and more going into what the clients want and their needs. So it's pretty tricky, of course, but agencies need to realize that this is the change that's required. How do you see it in North America as to with the maturity level and the speed of this change coming on board?
Yeah, by the way, I just have to say real quick, I love the way that you put that, the idea of being service agnostic and kind of story focused. I think that's a perfect encapsulation of what I was describing. And I think that speaks exactly to that kind of systems integrator role. So I love that. But to answer your question, I think you're right that there is a difference between the less mature marketers and the more mature marketers and then what they expect of their agencies. If I start with the first part of the question, which is how quickly will this happen? I think it's happening very rapidly, and especially in the B2B space, because what we're seeing in North America is there's rapid consolidation within the B2B agency community. I mean, every single week there's news of another agency that's within the top 30 in the league tables being purchased by another agency there, because I think all of us see that given the same growth that we talked about in the B2B space, there is an increased need to deliver globally for the global marketer. And so I think that consolidation is doing a couple of things. One, it's leading to agencies in the B2B space that are larger, that have more capabilities, that can deliver on that intelligent integration promise.
Mm-hmm.
For the agencies that aren't part of that consolidation, it's forcing them to form partnerships with other agencies to deliver on that same promise. And so while they might not be able to mature as an agency as quickly, they will have partners in order to be able to deliver on that same promise. And I can speak to that from the MX Group perspective. About maybe 2 years ago, we formed a partnership with an agency that's been critical in our growth. And it's not only brought in additional capabilities in different parts of the world, but additional capabilities just generally that we didn't have, or service gaps. And so, we've now gotten very comfortable in a partner model and probably have 5 or 6 different agencies that we partner with. And it's really become a very easy conversation to have with clients, where we can come to the table and say, hey, we really think that you need this. And here we've got a partner that does that. And then we bring them in and manage them on the client's behalf. And so I think the consolidation is going to force that to happen in pretty short order, especially within B2B. Now, where I see that probably happening the most, it might sound counterintuitive, but I think that where it will be adopted first is with the less mature marketers. The reason being, what I see in North America is the more mature marketers, the ones that have maybe larger budgets, larger marketing teams, they come from a background where in the B2B space, they have now built up this agency ecosystem. And for a long time, that's felt like part of their maturity curve is getting to manage those agencies and identify those agencies. Where if I look on the other end of the spectrum with the less mature marketers, they're the ones that are just getting off the ground. They're looking for a partner and asking, what should my relationship with an agency look like? They're open to hearing that and kind of building that model from the ground up. And so, but I think that's kind of interesting, because no matter what category you're in, the big, large companies always look at the smaller ones to see, all right, are the smaller startups, the ones that are newcomers, are they doing stuff that I should pay attention to? And I think that they'll start to, right? And so I think they'll start to see that.
Just like copying, I don't want to mean to name them as teenagers, but I mean, it's just like looking to the younger generation and saying, what are they doing that's really cool that I may need to copy? So you rightly said that. I mean, absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's where I think we'll see rapid change in this ecosystem model because of the impetus in B2B, that leading to a lot of consolidation in those discussions, or in the ecosystem space, and then that leading to some really great work with some less mature marketers that will then get the eye of those more mature and larger and established marketing teams. So it's kind of a pretty exciting time to be in the space.
Yeah, certainly. And I really wish this comes faster so that I would work with that type of agency that understands my needs. And at the same time, they get out of the comfort zone and start to look at projects not as a task. We need to tick that off. We need to get a PO, get this out, get paid, but rather as it's a win-win. It's a project that we want to see our client winning and getting this buy-in from the different stakeholders. And we're going to touch on that later on, is how the different stakeholders in the complex environment and ecosystems within an organization really impacts how marketing delivers its work through the agency. So yeah, great point. And if we can also wrap up on this point and say that the agencies can then become the client's consultant the marketplace with everything the client needs. So when they become that partner, I believe they're going to deliver amazing work.
This show is brought to you by Logicron, a leading demand generation company, providing solutions and synchronizing all your B2B needs logically.
So if we move to another point, one leads to the other. And with the rise of the new age B2B marketeer and shifting expectations in the marketing landscape, the marketing approach has definitely changed and shifted. I see that even in the B2B, your clients look at things from customer experience point of view. As with the e-commerce, they want to get the same service that as end users on the e-commerce or with marketplaces, they see that happening. How can you relate to that, and what's your point of view?
Yeah, I feel like, and this is not a term that I phrased or coined, but when I talk about it, I think there's this business to human experience, if you will, that's happening inside of the B2B space. So what I mean by that is that we've now recognized that just because you and I are in our work environments, we don't become robots. We're still humans. And that's led to different types of work and different ways to reach our B2B buyer, whether that's e-commerce or other. What excites me about that is all the new canvas that we now have to play with in the B2B space, right? We can use OTT or over-the-top streaming services. We can use digital billboards. We can use Facebook. We can use Instagram because we recognize that we can reach you as a B2B buyer even in those B2C channels or in your consumer life. Now we've got all of this great space to play with and to utilize that's leading to some exceptionally great work. It's also leading to better results for marketers because we can buy that media more efficiently. And so now we have much more to work with than we did before when we were just kind of in the silos of trade media and print advertising. And that's leading to some amazing experiences for that B2B buyer that we believe convert at a much higher rate. So I'm definitely seeing it. I think it's a positive for us. I think it's a positive for the industry. And I love how it's impacting the agency world.
Definitely. And one thing that I also like to, in my discussion with any agency, I tell them, we need to humanize this brand. We need to make people, and I think with the pandemic, even many organizations have realized that this is how they can connect with their clients. And they were really forced to do that because a lot of them were quite disconnected or like acting like robots or just brands. And they didn't need to bring that human side to their engagement with the clients, but they were forced into it. How you can feel as a client that this brand speaks to you, even in the B2B space. And if the brand doesn't do that, then you will feel disconnected because another brand is going to do that for you. So really humanizing a brand and making sure that you're connecting in your process with the engagement with your client, that you understand their challenge and what they want to deliver to their clients and what internal clients, or rather the different stakeholders with the complex organizations, with multiple stakeholders, how they can create this connection, how they can build the buy-in internally with all the different functions, because it's not only, marketing is not the only stakeholder for an advertising or an advertising agency or any agency they work with, but rather it's more the sales, the channel, because they all come together to talk to the clients. So if you don't understand their needs, let's say, for example, I'm in marketing and I work with complex stakeholders. They have specific needs. If the agency cannot cater to the demands of the complex stakeholders and understand the position I'm in, then we're all going to fail because we're not going to achieve what we want. So it's quite critical.
Yeah, Radwa, if I could just, I think you've hit on a real sweet spot for us, because what I talk about is how to exactly what you just said. I mean, you and I couldn't be more aligned. Once you connect with that human, in the business space, it's not just about creating those emotionally resonant brands that connect. It's then your responsibility, once you connect with that human, to enable them as a buyer. And I think that's where I see the best use of digital work is when you've done some good work, you've connected with that individual, but then you're smart enough to understand those dynamics that you just described that are so critical in the B2B space, and you use digital to help them rationalize the decision for their stakeholders to bring them along. Because to your point, if the B2B brands stop just at humanizing and they don't do the enablement, there's only so far that'll go.
Yeah, most certainly. Absolutely. So great points here. I mean, we could go forever on these points, Anthony, and focusing on people, on the different stakeholders really will get the agencies at a different place. And that leads to one other big challenge, which is the high turnover in organizations, whether it's on the agency side or on the client side. So many people are changing roles in the client's organization. And when a client point of contact leaves, all the expertise that person had leaves with them. Despite all this change occurring with client organization, there is a continuing expectation for agencies to perform at high levels of communication, engagement, and innovation to produce results. Now, so how does this rapid change impact the agency environment?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, we're seeing this every day where we're having a client that we've worked with might leave, and then to your point, that changes the whole structure. And we're not isolated to that either. Agencies are seeing that change as well. I think that what we're emphasizing as an organization is first and foremost the importance of education and how you're setting up your onboarding processes so that we can bring new people on board to a team, or even if it's with a client in a much more rapid way. That kind of leads to, I guess, the bigger picture, which is how are you using your agencies? If the agency, like we talked about at the top, is that really intelligently integrated partner, then marketers should look to their agencies to help them as they're onboarding their new clients or their new team members that are now going to be that client of the agency. If they're that partner, that consultant, that system integrator, that storyteller, they're a great person to help onboard the new marketing team members. And the agencies need to use that same sort of storytelling to make sure that as they're onboarding their new talent, that talent can get up to speed to continue to deliver against that promise of knowledge and depth of understanding of the client's business. And so I'd say double down on your onboarding materials. What kind of content are you doing to capture the expertise that you currently have? How is that content made digestible? What's the format around that? Because that's going to be critical over the next couple, probably 12 to 18 months, I think, before we start to see a slowdown on this turnover.
Most certainly. And if people would, again, back to the comfort zone, or rather to protecting their roles, as I would see it in many organizations. So they don't want to share the information they have or have other people being introduced to the different stakeholders. So being too much of gatekeepers, whether on the agency side or on the client side. So you find sometimes some marketeers, they don't want to introduce the agency to the other stakeholders, maybe because there will be engagement discussions, anything that would impact their image in an organization, or even to feel like the agency can replace a marketing professional. Like, and I've seen it happen in some organizations where they feel like, all right, we're going to have an agency model, which is basically someone to manage the agency, and we don't need the marketing skills or different marketing resources in an organization. Which is basically, each organization has its needs. So that could be a good model, but letting go of the skills, or when someone leaves an organization, I feel like there's major chaos. And until you get back on track with the engagement with the agency or with the projects that we're running, that just really sets back the business and the relationship with the client. So it is a win-win. And I think for the marketing professionals on the end user side, in marketing leadership positions, they need to prepare for the occasion that people on their team, for example, will leave the organization. So they need to open up with the agency and make sure that they have the assets and of course with protecting their data and information, of course that's given, but I mean, at least to fill them in with all the details so they can be always in a plug and play mode. The other aspect,
right.
Yeah, please.
Oh, I was just going to say, which was probably a good, it's kind of it's almost a concluding point to this, which is if you think about the challenges we've discussed, to do that, you really need to really trust your agency. And I think that if there's any like parting words that I can provide for the group listening to this is, get back to that level of trust with your agency. You have to be able to have those types of dialogues and conversations. And what's interesting to me is that arguably one of the most valuable assets that any company has today is its brand. And we will trust an agency to create the outward expression of that brand, yet not trust an agency to have the conversations about what's going on within their organization, where we need them to evolve to help us, or what type of working model we'd like them to fit in. That level of trust needs to come back into our industry because it only does good for both the marketer and the agency at the end of the day. So I couldn't agree more with what you just said there, that level of trust.
Yeah, I mean, building that trust, understanding the stakeholders within the organization. Who are we serving and who are we supporting? Really, for the agency to feel like when they get closer, they're going to deliver better and quality work and have this relationship rich. They may reach a point where they can propose to the marketing team in an organization how to approach their sales. What would really click? What would make everyone shine?
Yes.
If you come to me with an idea and you tell me it was like, you know what, this stakeholder's personality, building that persona for an organization. I'm on the agency side and I know in this organization, we have different personas. We have the CEO. We need to draw the CEO. We need to have a profile for that CEO and understand what ticks with him. It's just like analysis. When you do proper customer journey or a campaign, you need to have this persona, the cohorts, and really understand what would get you into that person. If the agency reached that point of maturity where they have the personas, the different personas laid out and you draw them and you understand how to approach your account, you're going to really achieve amazing stuff. So, yeah.
Absolutely.
So, Anthony, if I may ask you, what does the MX Group bring to the table as an integrated agency?
I think what we pride ourselves on is the drum that I've been beating through this podcast, which is we get to know a client's business deeper and as well as our clients do. And that's from the ground up. It's starting with sales ride-alongs and going to visit manufacturing facilities. And we do that because we look for very long-lasting and deep partnerships where we can provide a lot of value. And so I think there's a lot of integrated agencies out there. We provide the level of depth and integration at a scale that many other cannot deliver on.
Awesome. And Anthony, if you are going to give 3 tips to CEO of an agency, what would that be?
To the CEO of an agency, 3 tips would be, 1, be open to thinking about new ways of working, and that requires some vulnerability. I think a lot of agency CEOs are very proud of what they've built and a little bit less open and more vulnerable about where they can improve. 2 would be to get comfortable working with different partners and not assume that you can do everything on your own. Recognize what you do very well and what value you provide, and then be comfortable working with agency partners that can support you and further your value. And then 3 is start pushing your clients to be a part of the change. If we don't, as an organization or an industry, start having these types of conversations with our marketing clients about how we can do things better and how we can evolve, then the change won't happen. So start pushing from the top.
Awesome insights, Anthony. Thank you so much. This was an amazing episode. I really hope our audience and listeners enjoy it as much as I did. And please share your feedback and questions. We'd be really happy to answer them. And thank you again, Anthony.
Hey, thank you for having me, Radwa. And I really appreciate what you guys are doing with the B2B Pod. Some great content, and I'm really happy to be a part of it.
Thank you so much. Have a great evening.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the B2B Pod by the Pulse of Dubai with your host, Radwa Hassan. This show was brought to you by Logicron. If you aren't already, make sure you subscribe to our podcast on Spotify, Google, or Apple Podcasts. If you have any questions or suggestions, you can visit us on thepodcast.ae and follow us on social media at the B2B Pod. See you next time.